This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and the Toshiba Portage Z20T was something I always wish we had had a chance to review. It was a really neat convertible, 2-in-1. The top part being a lot like this, came with the keyboard dock, an active digitizer with a Wacom pen. So this is the new, more affordable model. This is the Toshiba Portage WT20. It is just the tablet, though Toshiba does list the dock separately as an accessory for $300. Intel Core M CPU inside, so decent performance there. 12.5-inch IPS display, no active digitizer here. Thin, really thin, and light, 1.6 pounds, but because it's fairly wide, the weight's spread out, so it feels lighter than it is. And the styling isn't bad. Sometimes we call Toshiba Styling Challenge. Well, this time they got it right. I mean, it's your basic black slab, but it looks slim, modern, and kind of cool. We're going to look at it now. So this is a Toshiba Portage W20T. This is a full Windows 10 tablet running on Intel Core M Broadwell 5th generation CPU. As you can see right here, it's a little bit small, but it is the Core M5Y10, which is, nominally speaking, an 800 megahertz CPU, though it's running at 1 gigahertz here. This is a 4.5 watt TDP. That's a very low power Intel CPU inside, though it can be upclocked to 6 watts of power, which is what Toshiba is doing here. The maximum turbo boost is 2 gigahertz. So as with all Intel Core M's, they're not as slow as you might think from, well, the base clock rate. As you can see here, it says full Windows touch support with 10 points of multi-touch. It does not have the Wacom active digitizer support for a digital pen that the Toshiba Portage Z20T had. And that was a pretty neat, although expensive at about $1,600. Product that did come with the pen and also with the keyboard dock. With this one, Toshiba really is marketing it as a standalone tablet, which is kind of odd because convertibles are pretty popular these days, but just tablets that are priced around $900, I think less so. Most people want them to do two things. They want them to be a tablet and they want them to be a laptop. Of course, you can buy the dock separately. Toshiba lists it on their website for $300, and it's the same dock that works with the older Z model as well. And where does that plug in? Well, it's got lots of connectors here, and we'll move our stand out of the way so you can see. Lots of connectors to mount it in to be fairly stable should you actually go for that optional dock, and the data connector is actually over here. The charger plugs in right over here, and it's a very compact little traditional laptop style charger with lots of cord, but it's very small. And if you do get that dock, now Toshiba is probably going to be agonizing here because they really don't want to focus on the dock, but that does give you Ethernet, HDMI, VGA, and 2 USB 3.0 ports, so it is a pretty useful thing. On this tablet itself, it's micro LAN. We have a micro SD card slot, micro HDMI, and a micro USB connector right here, so you're going to need a USB host adapter cable if you want to plug in a full-size USB peripheral, standard headphone jack over here, volume controls, and your power button is right there. So, challenging because of all the micro everything that's on there, but that does allow them to make an incredibly thin tablet. It's also pretty light, 1.6 pounds. It really doesn't feel that heavy. Like I said, it's probably because it's so wide, the weight is spread out, but this feels very easy to hold. It is, however, extremely widescreen. I mean, this is, they didn't pad the top and the bottom at all here, so it seems a little bit more rectangular than some other tablets that we've seen. This has an IPS Full HD display, 1920 by 1080. It's a touchscreen, obviously, and the viewing angles are pretty good on it, and it's a pretty enough looking display. It's not the super duper brightest. Our colorimeter had trouble measuring the brightness, so I'm not going to tell you the figure that said because I think it's wrong, but I would say, eyeballing it, that this is around 200 nits of brightness or so, at maximum brightness. Bezels are not too big. You do need a place to hold the tablet. Despite the fact that it's actually a very pretty looking display, the sRGB color gamut on this is not particularly wide at only 68% of sRGB and 51% of Adobe RGB. Now that matches several Lenovo products that this might compete with, though most of those do have a keyboard attached as well. So it's not super duper. It's certainly pretty enough if you're using this just to look at photos and video. But if you're a graphic artist type, it could be a bit of a hindrance because you're just not going to be seeing the full color gamut that is useful when you're editing photo and video. With the Intel Core M CPU in here, of course, really, this is not meant for heavy-duty video editing. Slower than a Core i5, certainly. And it's a funny thing with the Core M. It just feels pretty zippy a lot of the time when you're using it, but then once in a while, it'll just stop. Usually when an application is loading its resources and is doing some computation up front. It's not the actual load from the SSD that's quick. It's a 128 gig M2 SSD, but you'll notice occasional processing hiccups where I was just about to Control-Alt-Delete and kill it, and then just realized, oh, it's just taking that long. It's a funny thing, but most of the time it feels pretty smooth. But this is not for those of you who need to do a lot of coding, video editing. It's certainly fine for using the web, for email, for casual Photoshop use, for MS Office, all those sort of things. It's running Windows 10, as you can see here, with the updated start screen. Yay, Cortana integration and all of that good stuff. This has 4 gigs of RAM. As with most tablets, this is not an easy kind of thing to open up, so I don't expect to open it up to do upgrades afterwards. These are just stickers over here. You can remove them for a nicer, cleaner look, and we have the usual capacitive home button right there. And you can set it to launch into tablet mode, which is how this one is set by default. Windows 10 gives you that option, or go straight to desktop mode. And if you do have the keyboard dock, it should support figuring out which mode you're in and switching modes if you do want to switch between tablet and desktop mode on it. The black back has a kind of brushed metal style finish here, though it is plastic. It doesn't get cold enough to be metal, that's for sure. It feels like plastic. 5 megapixel camera on the back. The front one is 2 megapixels for webcam kind of video chat sort of stuff. The back camera at 5 megapixels, it's not a super duper fantastic camera, but most big Windows tablets don't have, well, super duper cameras on board. There's a 3-cell, 36 watt-hour battery sealed inside. Toshiba claims up to 9 hours of use. And by the way, there comes in that keyboard dock again. That one also has a battery in it to double run times. But if you're looking at the tablet by itself, Toshiba claims up to 9.1 hours in practical use with auto brightness enabled, which works pretty well. In mixed productivity use, we've been getting about 7 hours or so, which isn't too bad, especially for something this thin and light. In terms of benchmarks, well, it benchmarks pretty decently, relatively speaking, to a Core i5 machine. But you know what? I think Intel also kind of performance-tuned the Core M to do particularly well in some benchmarks. Here we have a PC Mark 8 home accelerated score of 2447, and that's just a couple of hundred points short of a Core i5, which honestly, in real life, computationally, not so much. The W prime score, where it computed pi in 24.37 seconds, is more an indication of its computational prowess, where we would see a Core i5 do it in, say, 19 seconds, compute pi. Geekbench 3, obviously, it scored 2213 for the single core, 4556 for the multi-core test. Again, a couple hundred points short of what we see on a Core i5, and really slightly optimistic, though for everyday productivity use, it isn't that bad at all. Since this is running Windows 10, you get IE, and you also get the Microsoft Edge browser, which we have up here. We're going to demo some videos so you can hear the speakers. And this is the on-screen keyboard. So in case you're wondering, what do you do without a hardware keyboard? This is the on-screen keyboard. You can also use a Bluetooth keyboard of your choice, too. So there's options out there. And if you really wanted to, you could use a USB keyboard. But given that there's just one micro USB port, I wouldn't go that route. Here we are on MobileTechReview.com, and we're going to play a video so you can see what the screen looks like, which is actually pretty pleasing when we are doing things like surfing the web. And the speakers sound a little bit blown out on this. We're going to check out our Moto X review. Touchscreen, by the way, works much better on Windows 10 in terms of dealing with small UI targets. It used to be like if you're using File Explorer to copy files back and forth, it can be really difficult just using your finger to get that done precisely. It's working really well on this, so I'm liking that part quite a lot. So here it is. Speakers, a little thin, a little tinny, a little buzzy. A little louder.
A lot of people love the original Moto X because it was a reasonable sized phone in the hand. Now it's joining the phablet kind of territory with a 5.7-inch display.
That's mega distortion there when we brought it to 70% volume. Makes me feel like the speaker is going to get a little more blown out. So built-in speakers on this, not so much. Happily, there are things like Bluetooth headphones, wired headphones, external speakers. You're probably going to want to use them if you're going to use this to enjoy a whole lot of video. Besides Bluetooth 4.0, this has Intel's 7265 Wi-Fi 802.11 AC. That is dual band Wi-Fi. There is no 3G, 4G option, but you can use your mobile hotspot in your phone and a variety of external wireless solutions if you need to do that sort of thing. So all in all, it's actually a quite lovely looking tablet. It's thin, it's nicely built. The display, even if it doesn't have awesome color gamut, is nice enough looking, isn't it? I mean, that picture looks pretty right there. The content we've been looking at is nice. I I just kind of wonder at the idea of debundling it from the keyboard and removing the active digitizer, the pen from the Z20T. Like I said, I think Toshiba is just shooting to make something more affordable for those who just want a pure tablet solution or maybe a roll-your-own keyboard solution, since there's a lot of Bluetooth keyboards available on the market. It does not get hot, by the way. The Core M, it doesn't really generate a whole lot of heat. You'll feel some warmth right here, but it does not get burning hot. So if you're looking for a tablet that you can actually hold without getting sweaty paws, this certainly is it. So that's the Toshiba Portage WT20 Windows 10 tablet, full-featured tablet here. Available now, again, it's $899, call it $900. And I'm afraid, in a way, it's an answer to a problem that not many people have. I think Toshiba sees this more as a business product, so maybe in vertical markets where you're mostly going to be using just the tablet section. But without an active digitizer and pen, I'm not sure that it really fits vertical markets either. If I was going to buy this, and it certainly makes sense if you don't need the pen that the Z20T had, I would certainly get the keyboard dock, and then you have something that becomes a laptop or can become a lightweight tablet with a pretty nice display. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.